OK，这样。你们可以听到我的声音吗？啊，好，OK，行，那我们就开始吧。OK，um, so first of all, thank you. Oh, really? Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for your appearance today. And today is our second. Wait a minute. And today is our second Latin class. Last time, before we start, I give a very brief summary of what we have done last time. So last time we had a very brief introduction to the languages in Italy in general. That is, in Italy, in the ancient times, there are not only like Indo-European languages, for the most famous, I mean, Latin, of course, but also other languages. Indo-European ones, like the related languages called Umbrian or Oscan, and also Mesapic, and also Faliscan. But also, we have like non-Indo-European languages, such as Etruscan, and also other Retish and other languages. Yeah, okay. And then we also checked some words in Etruscan, like there are some borrowings from ancient Greek, and also some contacts between Etruscan and other Italic languages, like Sabellic. Okay, uh, and and I hope that kind of some terminologies. So this is a language family called Italic, and then inside Italic we can have at least two groups, like Latin, and also Faliscan, and also like Umbrian, and Oscan, and so on, and others. Yeah, not only these languages, but also like others. Yeah, like Mesapic, we have already mentioned. Yeah, and these two, 1 and 2, they stay closer. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's just not Indo-European. But with which language it is related, it is unknown. Okay, yeah, it's a little bit isolated. Yeah. Okay, and then these two groups, these two languages, Umbrian and Oscan, they build another relatively independent group called Sabellic. Okay, so this is basically, and for Sabellic languages, we also checked. There's a very important document called Taburai Iguvenai, and it is written in Umbrian. The content is actually about the ritual regulation and Celtic instructions. And if you want to have a look, I actually put pictures in our course materials. And this is actually the file. And you can see it looks like this one. This is, I think this is the first tablet. And then this is the sixth tablet, I guess. So you see that it is basically written in the Latin alphabet or Etruscan alphabet. Yeah, it's like this. Yeah. Okay. And also checked some words in Oscan and Umbrian, in Sabellic languages, like, wait a minute. We have checked the dictionary by Untermann. So this is actually the dictionary we use for Sabellic languages, Oskisch und Umbrisch. Okay, by Untermann. Okay. So this is actually what we have done last time, and today we first introduce some Latin grammar, but based on historical perspective. So we first check this textbook by Michael Weiss. And we start. So this is actually kind of a guided reading. I'm afraid some of you have probably read a lot of from this book. So if you find this introduction a little bit boring or a little bit tedious, just tell me. I will concentrate on more, how to say that, other stuffs. Okay. So this is like if you read this grammar, so this is actually a very the best, I think, the best Latin historical grammar nowadays. And there's a second edition published in March this year. But basically, well, we can use the first edition, and I don't have the PDF file of the second edition. But basically, the most important things are same. There's no big changes to the core of this book. And then the first several chapters are actually introduction, like the period of Latin. Like you see, for us, probably most familiar is this period called Classical Latin, and famous authors like Cicero or Caesar or Caesar and Cicero. Yeah, there's actually a lot of pronunciation for a lot of versions of pronunciation of this name. Like in Latin, you pronounce like Cicero, and in English it's like Cicero, and in German it's like Cicero. And I guess that in Italy, it's like a cicero, yeah, like this. But okay, yeah, you know who this person is. That's right. Yeah, and in our following classes, we are going to read texts from this period, like Begier and Horatius. Yeah. And then this period, a little bit probably unfamiliar, this is called Old Latin. And you see, it's about a 3rd to 2nd century BCE. So a little bit, how to say, about 200 years older. Okay, it's fine, yeah. So about 200 years older than this period. And then we have like most important authors you can see, Plautus, and he's actually a comedian. He wrote a lot of comedies, 戏剧是非常有名的那个戏剧作家。And his works, he wrote a lot of dramas, and actually based on the Greek materials. Sometimes we can discover similarities or relationship between Plautus and some famous Greek authors. Yeah, and then we have some fragments, like fragments of Andronicus, Naevius, Ennius, and so on. And you find the texts of these authors also in our Latin course material. So I suppose that you have already downloaded these course materials, and in these course materials there are several folders. So about archaic Latin, I guess this is the inscription what we are going to read today. We're going to read the inscription from this folder, and not only today, but also in the following meetings. And then, if you click this Latin file, and you find Old Latin, and this is basically what I have mentioned. Because Plautus, you can use a lot of other versions. You have the Oxford classical texts, and also the German Teubner. It's fine, and Cato as well. And if you prefer English translation, and you can use the online Loeb translation. And for these authors, like Andronicus, Naevius, and Ennius, there's also, I can show you, I will see, wait a minute. Yeah, so if you go to Loeb Classical Library, there's a collection of the early Old Latin texts, like you have first inscriptions, and then check, this is Ennius, and he had a great epic called Anaris, and Tragedies and other plays. And then the second volume is about Andronicus, and then you have other like Naevius and also Pacuvius, and so on. And the third and fourth volume is the archaic inscriptions. This is also very important. Yeah. And here, the third volume is a famous 12 tablets of Roman laws. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, this is texts we have to, we can read later. And for example, this one, this is actually I make it a little bit, yeah. So this is actually the standard critical edition of the fragments. Like this one is this one is Andronicus and Naevius, and you can see this is very, very detailed. Like wait a minute, and this wait a minute, I'll move it. It's a lot of information concerning the secondary literature. So this is ordered by number, and you see this very detailed, and for the format of this book, this critical edition, there's a very detailed introduction at the very beginning. The introduction was written in German and English, so you can choose which one to read. Yeah, because like this abbreviation CS, CP, and also CE, CC, and so on. And at the very end, wait a minute. So at the very end, there's also a very detailed, wait a minute, it's a little bit. Should I open it here? Wait a minute. So if you check, yeah, here is a very detailed, here's very detailed, how to say that? Yeah, let's, yeah. Here, so at the end of this book, this is not only for, actually not only for the fragments in this book, there's also a very detailed information about the textual editions of other authors who, how do you say that? Because the fragments of the early Latin text or old Latin text are actually preserved in later authors. So if you want to check, examine, or if you want to, how to say that? If you want to check the texts of the early authors, you actually check the texts of the later authors. So it is also very important to have the information of the later authors. 就是逻辑是这样的，就是所谓的这些早期作家的戏剧作家的残篇，那其实是保存在后期的作家里面的。就是别人比如说引用了一些前人的话，然后呢，那个古典学家就把这些后人引用的这些话收集起来，然后做成一个整个的教看本。所以说我们在看这些残篇的时候，事实上用的是后期作家，比如说 Plautus，like Plautus. So I just explained that the logic of the fragments. So the texts are actually transmitted in the later authors. So you see that this is Plautus, and I guess there's also Cicero, if I'm not. This is Nonius. Wait a minute. I guess also Cicero. Yeah. Wait a minute. This is Plautus. Yeah, like you see that this is Quintilianus, a very famous rhetoric or grammarian, and you see that. So actually, for actually this book, these two volumes of the early Latin text offer also very valuable information on the standard text edition of the most famous or most important Latin authors. So check this book and use the index, use the appendix at the end. It's very important. And you see that like the Quintilian's edition, the first one was published in Venice in 1514. And then we have the Oxford edition. And here you see this is German edition, the Teubener. And then you have the information on the codices, like the manuscripts, the Handschriften, the most famous Handschriften, yeah, like the Codex in Ambrosianus, and also Bambergesis, and so on. Okay, so this is I'm sure that there's also see, this is Horatius. Yeah. Okay, the scholia, the scholia to Horatius. Yeah, the poems by Horatius are really difficult to understand. So there must be some scholia to this. And then you see that there's a Seneca, and wait a minute, I really want to, here is Vergil. So you see that there's also editions of Vergil. Okay, Vegia scholia. Yeah, actually scholia. Yeah, okay. And so on. Yeah. So this is actually the text edition about of the Greek tragic Greek dramas. Wait a minute. So this is the title of the book, Tragicodon Romanorum Fragmenta. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we have checked the second part. This is Old Latin, represented by Plautus, Cato, and the fragment of the um, tragedy authors, tragedians, or yeah, tragedy authors. Okay, and then the very early period called the Very Old Latin. It is from the 6th to 3rd century BCE. So these are basically the inscriptions, because I mean, if you can date like 6th to 3rd century, there's actually no written copy. It is, I mean, written copy in the sense of paper. Paper or like from plants, something like this is too early. So we basically have the inscriptions on either on stones or on potteries and so on. Yeah, and the Latin of this period, of course, is not well known. Yeah, and it predated the sound changes of syncope, weakening, and rhotacism. So we will talk about all these three features in our courses. So this is actually very important sound changes in Latin languages. Okay, so let's probably also, before we check the, I also saved some images of these inscriptions here. So this is not Latin. This is Umbrian Sabellic language, and then this is actually a very interesting. You see that this is like I forgot the name. So this is actually for fixing your clothes，就是衣服上面那个用来固定衣服的这种一般我不知道英语怎么很，我忘记那个词了，就是我忘记这个词了。不过你可以在那个 Wikipedia 上很容易找到。So this is actually inscription. Yeah, Bruce. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, correct. Yeah. Yeah, correct. So you see, this is actually the inscription carved here. Yeah, this is about 6th century or 7th century BCE. It's pretty early, yeah. This is interesting. And then you check this one. This is another inscription, and the image, the real image, you find it here. I find a photo of this. So you see, these are three pots, and then on the surface and in a circle, this inscription like this, and we will read this inscription today. Try to read this inscription. So there's also there's already transcription, so it's pretty convenient. Yeah. Okay. So this is actually the. Yes, this is actually, you see, what I have shown you is this one called Praenestine fibula, and this one, Duenos inscriptions. Okay. Yes, we will check this inscription later. So this is basically, finally, this one, this period called Late Latin. And Late Latin, it's kind of, I think it's to the, how do you say that? Yeah, there's a lot of song changes, simplification, and other development in the Late Latin. And also there's a very how to say that? That's also very important. How to say that? It's not a kind of Latin language. It's just a kind of a special period. I show you the. So this is actually this book about the Latin language in the Middle Ages. So this is also a very important research field in Latin language. And you will see this is a very, this is actually the most detailed and authoritative research of the Latin language of the Middle Ages. And there are actually 5 volumes. The 5th volume is only bibliography. There are a lot of bibliography, and the 5th volume for bibliography has more than 1,000 pages. And if we just check how to say that, check the contents of the book, and I just want to show you some. So the first volume is actually an introduction, general introduction, and tells you about the how to say that, the development of the Latin languages in Middle Ages. And then you see there's a special section for books, for dictionaries, sorry. Like the dictionaries for the Old Latin, no, not for the Classical Latin, or for earlier period, like the TLL, Thesaurus Linguae Latinae. We actually introduced this dictionary earlier, and then other dictionaries. Yeah, you can, if you want to know about Latin dictionaries, you can check this book. And more importantly, probably this section, the dictionaries for Middle Ages Latin, Mittelalterliche Latein. Okay. I guess, moment, yeah. Yeah. So then comes the introduction to so about the words in Middle Ages Latin, like the plants, animals, and so on, and so on. Yeah, so as you can see, this is a very detailed introduction to the Middle Ages Latin. And then the second volume, and you can see, this is about the semantic change, Bedeutungswandel und Wortbildung. So it deals with the semantic change of the Middle Ages Latin. So actually from our familiar classical Latin to Middle Ages Latin, there are a lot of changes. And one of them is the semantic field, and also the Wortbildung, the word formation. Yeah, it's like the christliche Sonderbedeutung. So like the special meaning in the Christian context, in the religious context. And then like Lehnbedeutungs, so the borrowing, so borrowed from other languages, like from the Greek, from the Semitic languages, and also other folk languages, like so. Okay. And yeah, so this is a very detailed introduction to the Middle Ages Latin. Yeah. And then this is word formation So about suffixes and also other yeah you see for the nomina, for the nouns, there are a lot of suffixes. You can check the different suffixes for building different words. Like this is suffix for building nouns, the substance, uh, substantive, how to say, substance. Yeah, sound weird. It's like it's nouns. Yeah，就是名词，就是名词，然后就是形容词 adjective，然后还有其他的adverbs and so on, verbs of course and so on. Yeah, as you can see, this is actually a very, very detailed introduction, or not actually introduction, but the research of the Middle Ages Latin. This is actually a very, very funny thing, because you can see that the German name is called Handbuch. So Handbuch translated into Chinese is like handbook, like a 手册. So actually handbook means that actually you can put it in your hand and use it very conveniently. But 5 volumes and about 4,000 pages, that's not really a handbook, right? Yeah, okay. So this is basically the introduction to the pure roads of the Latin languages. Okay, and then as I said, we start from the grammar of the Latin languages. Well, I probably should just skip the phonology section, and I will discuss about the sound changes and phonologies in our following classes. But today, probably let's take a look at this summary of development from Indo-European languages to from Proto-Indo-European to Latin. So you can see, so this is Latin here, and this is Sabellic, and this is the consonants, the stops. P, B, br. So you see that there are 3 categories. The how do you say that? The unvoiced, voiced, aspirated, unvoiced, voiced, voiced, aspirated. So this is always like this. 就是清音浊音浊音送气，清音浊音浊音送气，清音浊音浊音送气. So this is actually no unvoiced aspirated. So actually in Proto-Indo-European, no unvoiced aspirated. So this does not exist. Okay, and then let's check. So p to p, this is pretty regular, and b to b also regular. And take a look at this one. Bh can have 2 different results. This one, I put it, so this is very, the signs used by the linguistics, or to be specific, Indo-European linguists are very important. So what's the meaning of this 2, how to say that, strich, the stroke, the short stroke. So this means that F is at the beginning of the word. So at the beginning of the word, BH, bh, aspirated b, turns to f. And but in the middle of the word, so this small stroke means that it is also connected with the following how to say that, following sounds, right? This is connected with previous sounds。就这个词，这样写法的话是表示在词头，就这个词的开头，就前面没有了，前面没有东西了，就这个是开头。然后呢，这个表示在词的中间，就是所以说就是送气的这个 b 啊，它在开头的时候会变成 f， 然后呢，在中间的时候会变成一个 b， 所以这就是so this is sound changes, and you can see that sound changes are quite sensitive to contexts， 就是语音变化实际上是对于这个环境非常敏感的。So actually sound changes are sensitive to contexts. This is very important. You have to keep it in mind. Yeah. And then we will check some examples later. Yeah, this is kind of how do you say that? Latin in how to say that? This is actually the earliest period of Latin, and the following changes we will see. So this is actually the earliest period of Latin. And from the earliest to the classical, there are other sound changes, and we will see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You can see, you can say that actually very old Latin to old Latin, yeah, old Latin. Because actually these sounds, actually you cannot tell the difference. But later I can show you. Yeah, since you already asked, I can show you the examples. Wait a minute. Yeah, see, this is the example I want to show you. So actually, this table tells you not only the oldest Latin, but also the development from oldest to the classical. Because this one, PIE, Proto-Indo-European S, turns into S in early Latin, or at the beginning or in the middle. But this S turns into a in classical Latin. So this is actually the information in this. So this Latin can, how to say that? If it involves further development, and it will put it here, yeah. Yeah, this is like this. Yeah, this is actually basically the how to say that. I think it represents. Wait a minute. I think if he writes this, because wait a minute. As I said, he writes this, right? And then this one. So this is actually classical Latin. I have to put it clear. So this is actually classical Latin. Because it means that in classical Latin, S, if at the beginning, S is preserved, but if it is in the middle between the vowels, it turns into an R. But this is not the case in a pretty early period, and I can show you an example later, or probably now. Let's take a look at the example I have shown you. If we go back to the wait a minute. So let's check this example. So this is Duenos. Make it bigger. So this is actually the dueños. This is the dueños inscription. So you can see this is the second theater of 6th century BCE. So it's about 500 or 400 years earlier than the classical period. And then you see in these inscriptions, S stays as S. S is S, right? But this word is the Latin word for order or for swear, beschwört, yeah. So this is a Latin classical Latin form, and then this is a very old Latin form. So this is actually and then you see Siet is old Latin, a very old Latin, and then this is the classical Latin. So you can see in classical Latin, S is S at the beginning. If S at the beginning is S, S in the middle turns to a and this is a very famous sound change called, this is a sound change we have just rotacism, yeah. And so you see, this is, no, this is rotacism, yeah. This is rotacism. So you can see the Latin of this period, it predates the sound changes of rotacism. 就是说，在这个时期的拉丁语，就是大家看好6世纪到3世纪之前是没有那个 rotacism 的，就是它 rotacism 的意思就是说呢 ，s 在2个元音中间的时候会变成 r， 就叫 rotacism。rotacism 就来自那个希腊语的 ro 这个词 ，ro 对，所以就是这么命名的。早期希腊语早期拉丁语当中，不好意思说错了。就早期拉丁语当中，大家看好了 S 还是 S， 只不过到了后期的时候 S 会变成 R 这样的一个变化。OK，好吧，然后OK， 我看看 ，Yeah，we will read the inscription later. Yeah. Okay. So thank you for the yeah. Wait a minute. Yeah. So thank you for the reminding that here Latin is actually the classical period. Yeah. Okay. And then let's check Sabellic, and then you can see Latin and Sabellic are really related and close. P, p, b, b, f, b, f, v. So b turns into a v. And this sound change occurs also in other languages. I think not only restricted to Indo-European languages, but also other language families. And famous is like in Sanskrit. If you check the Sanskrit manuscripts, in Sanskrit manuscripts, these two consonants are usually mixed. Yeah. Okay. And I guess it is not only in manuscripts, but also in so actually the manuscript's writing reflects the pronunciation, right? And actually these two sounds are kind of mixed in how to say that, already in pronunciation, and then this is reflected in writing. Okay. And a very brief remark on this Indo-European B. Probably some of you already have already read this. And Indo-European B is a very special sound. Very special. Because it is so rare. it is so rare that we really doubt that why. So it is very, very rare. The occurrence of B in Proto-Indo-European is very, very rare. And the linguists tried to have developed some theories to explain the rarity of this sound. 就英欧语的这个 b 非常非常的少，就是少到就是语言学家开始质疑我们的重构，或者 anyway 就是开始质疑我们是不是犯错误了，就是有些词是不是我们做错了，就是重构错了，就非常非常的少。然后呢，有一种解释 ，so one theory for explaining the rarity of B is that this B sound has already developed into other sounds in the pre-Proto-Indo-European period. So it's like probably some words. So the idea is that probably some words starting with "ver" was originally a "b" sound, but "b" sound is kind of changeable. 就是非常容易变化，就是不是很稳定或者 anyway 这样，所以语言学家认为啊，就是这个很有可能呢，不是说 b 这个音很少，而是说更早期的时候 b 可能也很多，但是呢，它更早期的时候就已经发生音变了，就是已经变成 v 或者是其他类似的，就是相关的音，大概是这样。So this is actually one kind of theory. Okay, let's move on. And you can see t, t, d. So it's almost identical, right? And then f, d, b, f, b. So this is also a very interesting sound. So the h, you can see that this is in fact originally a dental sound, but aspirated. And then it turns into a labial sound, or like this. It's just like this dh sound is just functions like the bh sound, right? Okay, and this sound changes like it lost from dh to d, like it losses, it has lost the aspiration, right? Okay, and then there's a very important sound change here. It is written differently, but the sound is the same. So this is k, this is also a k sound. So you can see this is a palata. So this is I write it here. So this is a palata turns into a normal k. So this is typical for Canton languages. Yeah. This is typical for Canton languages, like the palata. So like palata turns into a velar. So this is a typical feature of the Canton languages. OK，就是这个应该叫印谔音吧？我不知道中文，就大家就记这个英文名字吧。我其实有的时候这种中文术语说出来还不是非常的让人敏感，就大家就记住这个 palata 变成 velar 就行了。就 velar 就是这种 k，然后 palata 就是 k。So the difference, the k, k, k to k, like this. Yeah. And then the voiced version is like the same. Lost the around. Eh? Okay, I forgot the Chinese translation. Yeah. So you just memorize the English. Okay. So from palata to velar. Okay. And then the voiced version is the same. Lost the palatalization. Okay. And then here, this is also a very interesting development. So gh turns into simple, turns into aspiration. Gh to h. If there's, wait a minute. if there's no unvoiced, so when the unvoiced sound, yeah, okay, this is a good question. So I copy your question here. Wait a minute. Yeah, actually, I really recommend you to memorize the English names. This is better for your future studies. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Hey, wait a minute. How to put it? I want to copy. That's really weird. I want to copy your. Okay. So so someone asked a question that I said that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I said that there's actually no unvoiced aspirated consonants in Proto-Indo-European, but in Sanskrit we know that there's a lot of this sound. Like let's put a. Wait a minute. I want to like this one. All right, like this one to stand. Right. Okay, and we have th, right? And also we have like pata, like pata, right? Yeah. Yeah, I know. I just want to write something which I'm pretty sure about the Proto-Indo-European form. Yeah. I know. Of course, pada and car. Yeah, but just want to. I just want to use suitable examples to explain this phenomena. So, but in Sanskrit, you see, we have this sound, and also we have this sound, right? And this is for this is a root called stand, and then this is a root called pass or way, right? Okay. So the reason for th is that if you check the Indo-European form, this st comes from the Sanskrit. Sanskrit star actually comes from the Proto-Indo-European this word. Yeah, and then if you make like if you make a weak stem, it turns like this. So this is a full stem, and if you make a weak stem, so turns into this sound, right? The weak stem, and then this t plus a laryngeal turns into th in Sanskrit. So this is actually the origin of th in Sanskrit. So th comes from a t plus. So it comes from a t plus laryngeal. Laryngeal two. Laryngeal two. Should I put it here? Laryngeal two. And so are the other examples, like ph comes from p plus laryngeal two, and k h comes from k plus wait a minute, plus laryngeal two. So this is actually the origin of the unvoiced aspirated consonants in Sanskrit. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, and then let's move on. I just talked about this. I just talk about this sound changes. So gh turns into a in Latin, and also a in Sanskrit. This is also a very interesting correspondence. So this sound turns to a simple aspiration in Latin, in Italic language, and also in Sanskrit. That's also interesting. But this sound, if it is not aspirated, if it is not a palatal, sorry, simple velar turns also into a h in Italic, but it can be a gh in Sanskrit. So it changes like this. Yeah. But since today is not a Vedic class, I'm not going to talk about these different changes. But keeping in mind, this is also interesting. How to say that correspondence? Yeah. Okay. And then the labia velar. So this is labia, labial velar. Yeah, labial velar. Yeah, labial velar 就是唇腭音。Labial velar turns to kw and gw to gu and gw to f or v. So you can see that the sound changes in Latin is like if you have aspiration, like the labial aspiration or dental aspiration or even velar aspiration. In Latin, always like a f, like the f sound is actually closely related with the aspiration, f, like this. And in this example, it just turns to aspiration, like this. So there's kind of some typological regularities hidden beside this. And then you see, for this sound, sometimes, so this is, this is also, we have mentioned, if it is at the beginning, it becomes a f, but a v in the middle of vowels. So this is also a little bit, how to say that, there's also a sound change in Middle Indic or other languages, like the unvoiced between vowels turns to voiced. So this is also a general, how to say that, you find these sound changes in a lot of languages. And this has a special name called declension. Yeah. Okay. So unvoiced between voice. So unvoiced consonants. Unvoiced consonants between vowels turns to voiced consonants. Yeah. This is called declension. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so this is basically the phonology, and probably before we move on, we can have a stop, and I just give a brief summary of we have seen. I talked about the language families and also the periods of Latin, and I have shown you the several examples of these periods. The very old Latin, we have the inscription, the interesting inscription here or here. This is for the very old Latin. And then for the old Latin, the works by Plautus, of course, and then by the fragments of the tragedy authors. And then the classical Latin, where we will read the works, we will read the text later, so you don't need to. And this is probably the most familiar category of Latin for most of you. And then the late Latin or the Latin in the Middle Ages, I have shown you the very detailed study. Okay, and then we talked about the sound changes, from Proto-Indo-European to Italic languages. And for the other language families, we will talk about later in our other courses. For example, at the end of this month, there will be a course on Slavic linguistics, and we are going to check these examples. And later, we will also have a course on Germanic languages, and especially Gothic languages. So we will talk about Gothic. And actually, in our previous courses, we already have seen a lot of examples of Germanic languages, not only Gothic, but also Old High German, and also Old English. Okay. And later, we will also have a course on Hittite. And for the Vedic Greek, we have regular courses on Greek and Vedic. And for the Avestan, the Iranian materials, I will analyze Iranian forms together with Vedic forms in our later courses, and also in our previous courses you have already seen. And so for the Old Irish, I actually knew nothing or almost nothing about Old Irish, but we have a specialist in our group. So if you want to know more, actually you can ask him. So let's have a break, and we will come back later to have a look at the how do you say that? The declensions, the Latin declension. We will talk about the Latin declension briefly, and probably then we read a little bit from the Duenos inscription. Okay.哦，是啊，哦，的确就不能复制，很奇怪。是，它是不是系统升级之后就 出于安全考虑，不让我们复制内容。哦，这样 ，OK，哇，对，可能应该是加密的问题。OK，对，但我的这个 Zoom 是那个慕尼黑大学提供的，所以它必须得加密。就如果不加密的话，它不能让我那个 plan meetings 这样，所以没办法。OK，嗯、哦，这样，也倒是可以，也可以，对吧？哦，也是，有道理。Okay, so let's continue. Um, about the Latin. Um, okay, so about the Latin declensions. So we first start with the second declension. That a little bit. I'm not sure why it is the second and the first is not this one, because this is actually the first or the um, how do you say that? If you check the Sanskrit grammar, this category is actually the first. Not really the first, but you find it. You first find this category in your Sanskrit grammar. Okay. I will see if we have kind of how to say that. Wait a minute. Yeah, you see, this is the Sanskrit paradigms. Bach, va, so probably I can how to say that? I can put. mm, there are some explanations later. Yeah. Okay. Mm. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So let's move on. So you see, now this is actually the probably the most familiar uh, declension in Latin. Like the nominative is us, and the accusative is and nominative neuter. This is a jugung, like and then this is singular, and then dative called or. Ablative is also a or, and genitive is a e, and locative is a e in some cases. And then we have the plural form of e, and plural vocative is the same, and accusative os, and is room, all room, and there's also a locative. Yeah. Okay. There's also other nouns like videos, video. So actually, um, I I actually want to compare the Latin form with the Sanskrit, but actually we can probably check the case ending here. Okay. Wait a minute. Yeah, so actually for the historical explanation, instrumental cases. The instrumental cases has just lost. I mean, there's no specific instrumental cases, but the instrumental meaning can be expressed by other forms. And actually, does anyone know that? Okay, but this is probably a general question. Wait a minute. So this is a Proto-Indo-European nominal inflection category. The cases in Proto-Indo-European, and you find it here. So first nominative, and then vocative, and then accusative, and then instrumental, dative, ablative, and genitive, and locative. But there's also a nice class, which is lost in almost all the languages. There's another called allative. And this allative is preserved only sporadically， 就是不是完全在其他，就这个格只在某些语言当中有保留 ，like preserved in Hittite and also in Greek, some forms, in some Greek forms, and probably also in Tocharian, but it is not for sure. Like it is not for sure. Yeah. Oh, probably, yeah. Yeah, probably in some Tocharian words. So this is also a nice case, but it is lost in other languages. So it's just like the instrumental. So from Proto-Indo-European to Latin, some case form are just combined. Like not for sure is that you can explain it in another way. So you can either explain it as an allative form or in another way. So this is not for sure. But in Hittite and Greek, this is probably for sure, yeah. Because the Tocharian forms have undergone a lot of sound changes. So it is not for sure, yeah. Okay. But in Hittite and some Greek forms, it is for sure. There's allative case, yeah. Yeah. The ablative is lost because ablative borrowed from instrumental. Yeah, we can check it. We actually can check it. Yeah. Wait a minute. I will explain it now, one by one. Well, of course, you can read the book by yourself, but I assume that there are a lot of terminologies, specialized, special terminologies, and they are probably a little bit, how to say that, not familiar for all of you. But if you find this, my explanation is a little bit too boring or redundant or not necessary, you can skip this section. Yeah. Okay. So I start from the very beginning. So this is, you see, this is actually a synopsis of the case endings. So we just analyze one by one. We just concentrate probably today only on singular. And for the plurals, there are other varieties. Yeah. Okay. So for the singular, nominative is S. This probably you know from many other languages. No, this for the allative, allative in Hittite, there's a special case form. So allative is actually, I can put it, allative is actually H2. Yeah. Allative is actually H2. So if it is H2, then you have a question. Then you certainly have some problems because in Hittite it is quite clear as a h, right? So in Hittite, you would have a h because H2 turns to h in Hittite, or you can put a hook, or you can put a, how to say, you can put a circle under it. And in Greek, you will see like a alpha or lengthened alpha, right? Like a or r, right? In Greek, you would see like forms like, how to say, like alpha and lengthened alpha. So you would see a lengthened alpha or eta, like in eta like this. And then in Tocharian, you can find an R, like as I said, the Tocharian form. Does anyone remember the appellative form? Appellative. appellative in Tokaran. Does anyone remember? Is it too difficult? Yeah, this is for plural, right? So it is actually a sa, or sometimes it is a. Yeah, yeah. Sa is let's see, a sa or a. Yeah, right. And we know that this this sa, this s probably not original, but original is probably this r at the end. So this is why I said that not for sure, but it is possible. It's only possible. Yeah, R and sa in both languages. Yeah, I can show you the if you count. There's a table in our course materials. Wait a minute. So you can see. So it is it is R in Tokaran A, and it is sa in Tokaran B. And as I explained, sir, this sir is probably come from how to say that. This sir is from influenced by other forms. The basic form is probably the R. The original form is probably this R, and this R is very likely comes from laryngeal. So this is a kind of explanation for Tokaran appellative. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And yeah, this is okay. And so let's turn back to the explanation. Yeah. And you see, nominative is S, and the vocative is 0, and accusative is M. So this is, there's no big problem with this one. This is Proto-Indo-European. And instrumental, it is H1, and the dative is A, and the ablative and genitive is S in principle, but this S can have ablaut. So S in principle, but this S is in with ablaut. Ablaut. So S. So if so, my question is, if this is so, this is very important. You have to keep in mind because we will use this information in our later courses. This is a very important information, ablaut. So my question is, if there is a ablaut for these three forms, which grade is this 0S? Yeah, this is a 0 grade, right? So this S is 0 grade. And then this is a 4 grade, right? 4 grade. But 4E grade, right? 4E grade. And then this is also a 4 grade, right? 4O grade. Yeah. So this is all for genitive or ablative. But ablative has another form. Put it in the bracket called or word. A little bit complicated, but we will explain it later. And then locative. And for genitive, it is also a little bit complicated, also. But there are also other forms. I will show you later. And for locative, it is usually a E or nothing. Okay. So this is basically for the singular. I think it's enough for today. I'm not going to talk about plural today. Tomorrow, not next time. Next time we will talk about plural. So let's take a look. So this S is pretty simple. There's no upload. You see, this S has no upload, but this S has upload. Okay. So this S has no upload, so it's pretty simple. So it's tested in all the Indo-European languages. Like Latin, you have king, like lex. So this lex, this X letter comes from a k plus an S, and this S is nominative singular. And then you have nix, comes from k plus S, and so on. And then you have, like in Hittite father is called Atta, plus an S. Yeah, it is written so, but the pronunciation is the same. It's the S. Yeah, it's the S sound. Okay. And there's some kind of sound change. Like for the father word, the father is called pitar or the pater, right? So you will see it's probably a little bit strange because it is the nominative, but there is no S at the end because there is a special sound change called the Zemmerenes law. It tells you that if you have an S at the end of a R, and then it will disappear with compensatory lengthening of the previous sound. It becomes a lengthened air, and this S disappears. So originally, there is a S, but you cannot see that S because it already disappears in pre-Proto-Indo-European. So these two stars, there's some terminology you have to probably you can remember. As I explained, this song, this means reconstructed, right? Reconstructed, and this means even more, further reconstructed. So further reconstructed. Usually, the Indo-European linguistics, usually the European linguists do not discuss about this stage. So for us, important is PIE, not pre-PIE. So this is actually the, how do you say that? This is our kind of acknowledged principle of our discipline. So for the Indo-European linguists, important is PIE, but not pre-PIE. So you can actually not really prove this stage, the stage before PIE. And there are some, how to say that, some exceptions for this one. It is for sure, it must come from this form. But already in the PIE stage, it has already become this. Yeah, okay. So this is actually the logic. Yeah, okay. And the meaning of these two stars. Yeah. Okay. So this is simple S. And simple S can be added to the semantic vowel. So this O is a semantic vowel. So you see here, the example of lex, I put it here. So the Latin, get it right. So Latin lex comes from lake plus S. So lake, I analyze here. Lake is kind of the stem, and the S is the ending. And the stem, there's no vowel there's no vowel, it's consonant, right? So this is called asymmetric. But like this one, like Latin equus, in Old Latin is called equus. So you see, it is not a mistake. It is written really like this, with an O, not a U, in Old Latin. This is Old Latin. Or probably very Old Latin. Probably very Old Latin. Okay. So you see, before this ending, there is a vowel, and then this is semantic. So this is semantic. So this is also a very important concept, asymmetric and semantic. Yeah. Okay. So this is a vowel, and there's no vowel. And why we call it semantic? This is just an awkward. It's not a very good name actually, because semantic has developed into other meanings. Like in Chinese, it's called 主题, right? So Simpac, right? Like 主题公园, Simpac, right? Simpac. Yeah. So actually, this comes from the Greek word. So actually comes from the Greek word thema. So thema, if you check the dictionary, Greek dictionary, yeah. So it actually means that which is placed or laid down. So actually means something you put there, you put between, you put inside. This is actually the original meaning. So, sorry. So semantic means that you put something between. So this is semantic. Okay. Okay. So, okay, the time is almost over, but probably we can read a few words from our inscription here before we stop. So this is Dreadnought's inscription, and I have shown you the image of this inscription here. So let's check it together. So see, this is from the 6th century. Okay, so let's read it. It starts from here. You see, it's from here, from here. Now, should I put a circle here so that you see? Oh, that's pretty big. So it starts from here. Yeah, from this one. Well, it's actually different. It's actually different declensions. There's actually no real motivation for this. Yeah. Yeah, it's just a kind of, we just take it for granted that there are different kinds. But why they are, so your question is that why there are different kinds? But there's probably no answer for this, right? Why there are different kinds? Why couldn't we only have asymmetric, right? There's actually no good answer for this, yeah. But there's a kind of a tendency, I can say that. There's kind of tendency from asymmetric to semantic. Yeah, it's actually a tendency. Yeah, okay. this we can, yeah, okay, right. So we only know that there are different kinds, but why there are different kinds, this is not this cannot be answered. Yeah, and there's a great tendency that from asymmetric to symmetric. Okay, yeah, and we can talk about later in Sanskrit classes. So it starts from here. Hmm. Not really older, because at the very beginning we have both. We have both, but certain asymmetric. So how to say that? I put it here at the beginning. We have both symmetric and symmetric, and the later periods, there's a tendency from asymmetric to symmetric. So it means that later periods are more symmetric than asymmetric. Yeah. Okay, so it's probably to make the yeah, okay, yeah. And I thought semantic verbs is a majority. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, a lot of semantic verbs. Yeah, is a lot of semantic verbs. Yeah. Okay. So let's probably read a word and then we can stop. This we start from here. So this is your. It's a your where and sat. So your where sat. You can see this is your where sat, and then stop. This is your where sat, and then there. This is a D. This is a they was. Oh, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. So this is they was, and then stop, and then qua. This is a kappa borrowed from Greek. This is kappa qua e, and so on. So let's analyze these first words. So your Versat is Judat. Judat means beschwören. Beschwören means swear, I think. Yeah, swear. Yeah, and then Deivos in Latin is called Deos. So you see, there's a lot of there's some changes, right? So this ov becomes to. So let's analyze a little bit. So your sat Latin you lat, right? And they was to Latin. Yes, right? So this is some changes. So S turns into R here. This is a rotacism, right? And then this all were contracted and then to a single u. Yeah. So this u must be long. U, jurat, and art is same. Art is same. Okay. And then this tables, you see this if the how to say that they turn into so I guess this a turns into a, and the war disappears. So this is a semivowel. It disappears like this. If I think this is a, the day turns into a, and then war it's just like a glide sound， 就相当于两个元音中间有一个 war 这样，然后它就消失了，就没有继续写出来，大概就是这样的一个，大概就是一个这样的过程。对，我看一看有没有其他的。 OK，好吧，那要不就这样，就是 so this is actually for today. The time is time's over. We will read further and explain the grammar further. So before we stop, I make a short summary what we have done today. So we have so this is an introduction. So we talk about how to say that. Well, I missed it. Yeah, we talk about the sound changes. Wait a minute. Yeah. So we talk about the different periods of Latin, and then we talk about the sound changes, from Proto-Indo-European to Latin, and compared Latin with Sabellic, which are pretty similar. And then we have also talk about the case endings, based the different cases in Proto-Indo-European, and also the case endings. Wait a minute. Oh yeah, here the different the case endings, and to and pay attention to the genitive and ablative, and the key element is actually s, but this s has ablaut, so it can be os, it can be s, and it can simply be a s. And then we analyzed some words from the Duenos inscription, and we will analyze more words and also more grammar. So this is everything for today, and thank you very much for your attention until now. Yeah. 我希望你没有睡着，好吧 ？OK，那今天就到此结束，然后非常感谢大家。OK， 好，Thank you very much. OK， you're welcome. OK， so see you next time. So this week this week, okay, that's a very short advertisement. So this weekend is our Sanskrit class, right? And if I'm not mistaken, this week, yes, so this week is our Sanskrit class, and upon the request of your Sanskrit teacher, Zhao, and I will explain some irregular nominal declensions in Vedic or in Sanskrit. First, the aha and aham, day, and then the path, pata, the word for path or road, and then the word for water, up, and then this word called anadu, because it's a little bit, how to say that, very special forms, and I will explain it. I'm not sure how much time we will use, but I try to be as simple and clear as possible. And then we will again read Ashoka inscription and talk about laryngeal a little bit. And yeah, this is actually, and probably Vedic, and probably Lik Veda. Yeah. So this is actually for the plan this weekend. Okay. Yeah, 不规则语干. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we talk about the irregular nominal declensions. Okay. So thank you again. Yeah. Have a enjoy the rest of the day, and we will see each other on Saturday. Okay. So bye bye, and I will stop the meeting and upload the video to our to the website. Okay. So bye bye. Okay.